Over the last few years of crafting, I've gathered quite a few pieces of wood in different forms, dowels and sheets and buttons and beads and things like that. And so I thought today it would be fun to try and make a trash bot entirely out of wood. A wood bot. I knew I wasn't going to make a large bot this time, so I gathered a few pieces, and this is what I'm going to start with. I'm sure I'll add a few other pieces as we go, but this was just a good jumping off point. And I start by flattening the bottom of this round piece. I also flatten this coin-shaped piece, and this will be attached to the bottom of that round piece that I also just sanded. I'm using super glue to attach everything together. Because this is such a small bot, I don't really need to add any reinforcements via wires or things like that, so everything is just glued together with super glue. The central part of the body is going to be made from the top half of this cone-shaped piece, and I cut it off with my saw, and then I can clean it up with some sandpaper and attach it to the two pieces I just glued together. I'm going to start working on the eye area now, and so I'm going to use this, you guessed it, piece of wood to make that, and I'm just going to round off one end so that it fits a bit better against the rounded shape of the head. Then once that fits a bit nicer, I cut it off into the final shape and clean up the cut off end. Then for the actual lens, I'm going to use one of these tiny beads here, and I'm just drilling out the center because these beads have a lot of gunk and pieces of wood fiber inside, and so this just cleans it up and makes it look a bit nicer. And I know that probably looked a bit freaky, drilling so close to my finger, but I promise this is a very low-powered drill and it will not cut my finger, as you can see. I also clean up the faces of the bead just to make it look a bit nicer because these are mass-produced, so they're not going to be perfect. Then I can attach the bead lens to the eye stalk, I think we're going to call it, and then I can attach it to the main body. But before I do that, I do a bit of sanding just to clean it up because it's easier to do this now before adding the eye stalk in place. I realized I wanted the body a bit longer, so I'm adding this bead to the bottom, and this is where the legs will attach to, which I will build very shortly. But before I can build the legs, I'm going to build some antennas, and for that, because I want to keep everything wood, I'm using some very small wooden dowels, and I'm very carefully, drilling out a small amount from the larger dowel to fit the smaller dowel inside. And this is to make it look like they fit into each other, like the old collapsible antennas that you'd find on radios and cars, which don't really exist anymore, but I think they still look really cool, and so that's what I'm going for. And by don't really exist anymore, I mean the antennas don't really exist anymore, not the cars don't really exist anymore. Anyways, I drill a couple holes in the head, and then I attach the antennas with a bit more super glue. I always love a double antenna like this. Quite a few of my bots have double antennas. Hey, remember when I said I was going to start working on the legs soon? Well, now that time has come. I'm going to build the legs out of the wood parts of these tiny little clothespins. I'm using the clothespins because they're already in generally the right shape, and I like that they have a slight taper to them, and the different little inlets and outlets kind of make for an interesting shape, so I'm going to use that to my advantage. Each clothespin will make one leg, and so one of the halves of the clothespin will get cut just at a small angle, and that will make up the bottom of the leg. And then for the top of the leg, I do that same angled cut, but I also cut it off at a much shorter length, and these two will get glued together to form one single leg. I ended up making 4 of these legs because 8 seemed like too many, 2 wasn't stable enough, and 3, well, I don't know, I just wanted to make 4, so I made 4 of them. And like I said before, because this bot is so small and light, being made of wood, I didn't have to add any reinforcements like pins. They can just be glued with super glue, wood to wood. The main construction of the bot is finished, and now I can drill a small hole in the bottom to add a temporary pin just to hold it for painting. But before I can start to paint, I'm going to add a layer around it to seal the wood, and I'm going to use Mod Podge water. And the reason I'm doing this is because if I go straight into priming and painting, the wood is going to soak in a lot of that paint and primer, and I may get some weird textures. So this will just smooth everything out and hopefully will make painting a bit easier. Then when it's dry, I can do a coat of primer and then actually start to paint some color. For the color, I'm going to use this faded blue from Vallejo. It's a really nice color. I haven't used it in a while, but I really like these faded colors. I think they look really cool and have kind of a fun vintage vibe to them. I paint the entire thing with this faded blue, and then I'll go in with some hand brushing and add a bit of extra color. And now that we're in the painting process, I think it's a great time to give a shout out to all my patrons over on my Patreon. Thank you all so very much for the support. I really do appreciate it. And if you're interested in joining, I will have links at the end of this video on my page and in the description. No pressure to join, but if you do, you get a shout out in every video like this, and also some behind the scenes footage of every single video/build that I make. Moving on to weathering, this is the standard weathering I use for basically every single project at this point. A couple of contrast paints mixed with water and isopropyl alcohol. This makes what is called a wash, and then you do what washes do best, and you wash over the entire thing, and then you let it dry. I've found that this is the fastest and simplest form of weathering you can do. And if you want to add a little extra, you can use a Tamiya weathering kit like this and add a bit more surface grime on top. I'm going to make a base for this guy because he's pretty small and I don't want him to get lost among all of my other trash bots. I start with the foam core from a foam core board with the paper removed, and then I use some foam safe super glue and glue another wooden base to that to make the base for my base, you know? I cut off the extra foam, clean it up with some sandpaper, and then I can add a few of these plaster stones. I'll glue them down with more of that foam safe super glue, and this is that foam safe super glue. It's a Super Gold Plus. Once the rocks are glued down, I can add a coat of sealer. This is just watered down Mod Podge with a bit of paint I think I added this time just for some color and to try it out. And then once that's dried, I can add another layer, but this time not over the rocks. And this will be the layer that I actually glue the sand or dirt in this case too. This is just some dirt that I stole from outside, and I sprinkle it over the top, and then I spritz it with isopropyl alcohol and add a few drops of watered down Mod Podge. The alcohol breaks the surface tension and allows the glue to spread out and lock all of the dirt in place. When I was making this bot, I really had no idea what I was making. I was just sort of putting shapes together and hoping for the best, but it ended up looking like a jellyfish, and with the colors, it's very ocean colored. So I'm going to make some tiny little seaweeds here, and then I'll add that to the base to make the base look more oceany as well. This is just some strips of styrene, and I can use a lighter to bend them into more of an organic seaweed shape. I make a few of these and even glue some together, and then these will get a coat of primer. I will paint them green, and I'll even add a small amount of brown wash just to add a bit of contrast. Honestly, the base looks almost finished without being painted, but I am going to paint it. I start with a black primer and then a dusting of white, and then I can go in and start adding some color back. I start with gray, then add some brown washes, and then I go in with even more gray washes until I'm happy with the final result. I use more of that foam safe super glue to glue my little seaweeds in place. I put them specifically around rocks because that's where seaweed would naturally grow. And then I paint the sides black. And the last thing I do is glue my little jellyfish bot in place. And with that, it's pretty much done. Thanks for sticking around till the end of the video. That was a fun little build this week, and cool to build it entirely out of wood. It was a fun little self-set challenge, I guess. I really like that it turned into an underwater bot. I was not planning that, but with a jellyfish shape and the colors, it really does look like it's supposed to be underwater. And those little styrene seaweed pieces turned out really great, and so I will hopefully be using those in a future project. We'll just have to build another underwater bot. If you did enjoy this video, I've got a whole bunch of others on my channel. I try to put out a video every Saturday if I can. Like, subscribe, comment, share, all of that good stuff. Have a wonderful day, and as always, I will see you in the next video.